90.3 WHPC now presents Law You Should Know. The law affects every aspect of our lives, our home, our jobs, and our recreational activities. Now, learn about the law and how to protect yourself against the loss of your liberty or property, and learn how to stand up for your rights and seek compensation when you have been wronged. Your host for Law You Should Know is attorney Kenneth J. Landau, a past dean of the Nassau Academy of Law, and frequently lectures to lawyers on ethics and avoiding problems with clients, and to the public on how to choose and use lawyers. This is Law You Should Know on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Hi, this is Ken Landau, and welcome to Law You Should Know. Our special guest today is Reesa Woolf, and she is a speech trainer and coach, and she also is, we should call her Dr. Woolf, and she is the author of the book, Mr. Bear Speaks Without Fear, and we're going to offer tips to lawyers and others on how to speak with more confidence and with less fear. Dr. Woolf, thanks for being our guest today on Law You Should Know. Why is speaking so important, and why is it that so many people are fearful of it?
I've noticed that people who speak well get attention, and sometimes good people don't get attention because they don't speak well. And particularly lawyers who have all this knowledge and want to share and sincerely want to help people, when they speak clearly and succinctly and to the point, people take home their information and they really appreciate them even more.
And this is whether they're talking to a client, a colleague, or perhaps a jury, or to a judge, or even to a large audience.
Mm-hmm. Everyone has seen people that, you know, all of us have been to conventions where someone who isn't used to speaking is a speaker, you know, a breakout speaker. And you can see they're smart and they've even prepared a good speech, but their delivery is either so fast or so quiet, or they say, or when they make a mistake, they just fall apart and are so embarrassed that it really hurts them transferring their information to you. And all of those things are easily fixed.
So, assuming they have a good information, and perhaps can you explain what you mean by that? Information that's easier to convey.
There are several things that make a person excellent. I train TED Talk speakers, and we spend a lot of time honing down their information to what is it that these people want to hear. And I would say to all lawyers that certainly you have a catalog of things that you can say, but to stop before speaking, even if it's 5 minutes before addressing any group, and think, okay, who is in this group? And when I'm finished, what is it I want them to take away? What is it I want them to know? And once you know what you want those people to know, we're going to write what are 3 or 4 or 10 bullets, you know, kind of main points, not the things that would make you want to do that goal, but would want to make them do that goal. So get inside of the people that you're training, or your staff, or a jury, or any other human on earth, and think, I want them to do this thing. What could I say to that person's brain that they would go, oh, well, it certainly seems like a good idea. So I'm going to leave out some things that would be significant for me because they don't have my value system and experience.
So you want to keep it simple and as interesting and informative to a general group as possible. You don't want to throw too much information. You don't want to make it too complicated. And of course, this may depend on the sophistication of the group and the purpose of the talk. And is it better to let's say, dumb it down and just use simple words as opposed to complicated words or ambiguous words?
Many people think, oh, well, I better impress them and have an excellent vocabulary. I differ in my opinion of that. I don't want to use words that some people in the room would go, oh, God, what does he mean by that? What is she saying? I want everything to be pretty much baby simple. People on television talk at pretty much an 8th grade vocabulary level. And that's why when they speak, we don't go, ooh, what is that word? I've heard that word before. I don't know it. Plus, now we're speaking to people, many, many, many people who are fluent in English, but speak English as a second language. And we don't want to be making references to books we read and movies that we've seen and assume that everyone has the same background and experience that we have. So I would say really proof what you're going to say and make sure that it's the simplest way, because the only goal of speaking is to transfer information from your head into their heads. And we don't want to distract them.
And if they need to know more, you want to invite them to contact you or tell them how to research that point deeper. You don't want them to get lost in the presentation.
Yeah, the bottom line is that people who listen to you are experts in their own fields, and they don't want to be an expert in your field. They have certain questions, they want you to answer it, and then they want to go off and use it.
Should you generally cut the fat? You should keep it simple, and you should just deal with the most important points and not have digress too much where you might lose your audience?
It's all based on who are the people I'm speaking to, what is the goal I want from them, and what are the points, the main points that would bring them to that. And then, as I started with, you all listening have a ton of information. They don't want that. They want what they want. And so you decide ahead what's going to be relevant and persuasive to them. And then they will or they won't, but at least you've done your job of talking to their interest. And sometimes you have to call ahead to the person who invited you to speak to say who's going to be there. Because then if it's a mixed group, you can throw the same idea, say it two different ways, to the two different groups.
And also it's important to do that so you talk at the right level, you give appropriate examples and talking points that will keep them interested and engaged and make it understanding for them. Mm-hmm. Is it good to take questions at a certain point or engage the audience, with questions or comments or hand raising just to involve them in the talk or just to see where they are in terms of the information or dealing with the problem? Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, there are two things. When we're in person, I would say a point, and everyone, most of the people on the call have already been speaking. You know what things you say that most people could be confused about or ask most questions. So in your talk, think of the questions they probably will ask before you get there and put that information in your talk. If you know that they almost always don't understand something, include that. And on Zoom, I would say, after your opener, say, I'm going to talk for about 5 minutes and then pause and take a break if you want to write your questions in the chat or raise your hand.
And should you lead into it by saying, I'm frequently asked about A, and this is my general advice? So they realize that you're answering a common question, so they tune in and focus on that.
I think that's a fabulous idea.
And go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, or you could phrase it like this. You might be thinking, and then you say what they're thinking, and they go, oh, gosh, I really am. But don't say that all the time. And I don't say, I know you're thinking, because 5 people aren't, and then you lose them. Instead, say, you might be thinking. And then say what the topic is that you're talking about next. And
is it good to follow the rule of threes? People may fall into 3 groups. People are generally in 1 or 3 situations, and then you maybe focus on each of those for a moment?
Well,
rather than one size fits all?
Oh, don't do one size fits all. That's what makes you really not interesting. People know when you're giving a canned speech, not only because the content is somewhat relevant and somewhat not, but also when people give the same talk over and over, they kind of start to sound like they're reading, and it kind of sounds like it's memorized, and then everyone tunes out or hangs up.
And now on that point about memorization versus reading, what kind of notes or, cues can the speaker have without being too distracting?
I do not encourage you to memorize. There are only 2 things I memorize, and that's the opening that you're going to use and the close. Because the opening is to get them to look at you and to look up from their phone. And if it's smooth and interesting, they'll look at you. But from then on, use an outline with key words, because then it forces you to be conversational. Once you have everything written out, it's sabotaging yourself.
And in terms of that opening, what are some dramatic ways that a lawyer can start a presentation? Let's say, a persuasion, an argument to a jury, or some type of conveying some type of information to an audience. What are some good ways to get attention and engage the audience?
I'm going to give you a list of things, but first I want to make an extremely important point, and that is your openers should be brief. They should be short. They should not go on and on. Everyone is there for your content, and they know why they're there. And all of us have been to conventions or heard speakers that they go on and on with the openers like, buddy, we came here for your stuff. Give us your information. So make it brief. I'm going to offer your listeners, if they want, I have a list of what I give my TED Talk people for openers. And it has the usual, of course, of, tell a story, use a quotation, but it has unusual things such as imagine. So you start off with imagine, and you paint a picture of how great things are going to be if they do what you're thinking of, your goal. But also you could say imagine, and you paint a picture of how nasty things are going to be if they don't do what you're looking for. And then after every opener, use like a linking statement, kind of a bridge from your opener to your material, and say, and for that reason, today I'm going to talk about, and then you can say the names of your three main points, or you can just go into your first main point.
And can you use something that's going on in that room that just happened in the news, something to get their attention and capture their interest?
You have hit the nail on the head. The purpose of the opener is not to give them content. You're the middle of the talk. The body of the talk is the content. The opener has one purpose only, and that is to get them to look at you. Because sometimes it's the afternoon or it's after lunch. Their blood sugar has dropped. You're the fifth speaker. So to say something that just happened or something that's in the news, but rehearse it out loud. Because the first time you say something, even people like me, I am a keynote speaker at conventions. The first time I have new material, I stumble over it out loud. Writing and reading and mumbling is not the same as saying it out loud. So I would suggest that they rehearse the opener and close out loud a few times. You want them to, everyone's given the same material repeatedly. And like the fifth time, you're a lot better. That's what rehearsal is. So rehearse your opener and closes. Pretty much, if you know your material, you can just have your outline and follow that. But maybe rehearse a part that's new.
And I just want to remind our audience that we're talking with Reesa Woolf, PhD, who's a TED Talk trainer. She's also the author of the book, Mr. Bear Speaks Without Fear. And we're talking about how lawyers and others can speak more confidently in every possible situation. And you're listening to Law You Should Know here on 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College. And so it's okay, and I'm sure seasoned speakers sometimes practice on a few friends and see what, have a test audience. Just as a comedian or an actor is going to rehearse and try out different jokes, try them out on different audiences and maybe modify them a little bit. There's nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, not only is nothing wrong, it's rather imperative, because the first time I rehearse, I stink. And I'm a professional. So just know that people who are afraid of public speaking, they start to rehearse, they stumble and they're awful the way I am. And they go, oh, you see, I can't do it. They quit. And then the first time they do it is in front of the real people. And then they go, you see, I can't do this. But it's just because they have to rehearse beforehand.
So rehearsing is critical. And is it also, it's good to have some notes. It's good to have a flow in your head. It's good to, I guess, be sincere. Mm-hmm. And you want to touch on what the audience wants to know. Yes.
Absolutely. When someone speaks and they are halfway through and they, snap their fingers and go, oh, there's one more thing I wanted to say. That person is wasting my time. They didn't show us the respect to throw a couple of notes on a sticky note and bring it in. People like when you bring in notes because it's showing them that you've prepared, but only use an outline with the fewest words possible. In other words, if you can talk for 2 paragraphs about something, don't clutter up your notes writing 2 paragraphs. Write 1 word that will make you come out with the 2 paragraphs that you already know. And you know what I didn't mention to you? I said that I would give your folks a handout of really great openers. And if you want, I can give you my website so they can ask for that.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
It's confident with a T at the end, confidentspeaking.com, because everyone wants to use confident speaking. And on there, if they have on the contact page, just say, send me the openers or closes.
And you also have information on your website at confidentspeaking.com that lawyers and others who are speakers can use.
The truth is that every single brilliant thing that I have learned over the years, teaching now over 3,000 people, I used to be the senior trainer in the largest seminar companies, and I taught literally thousands of people. I put it into a book that is so user-friendly. People who are afraid of public speaking would never read an academic book. So I wrote it very simply, and it not only gets over public speaking fear, it makes everyone a confident speaker.
Okay, and that is Speaks Without Fear?
Yeah, Mr. Bear Speaks Without Fear teaches you how to write, how to be interesting, how to be succinct, which is imperative, how to close, and has like 45 tips on how to eliminate, not cover over, but eliminate public speaking fear.
And as you mentioned earlier, practice is important. Practice your opening, practice your transition, practice your talking points. And you don't have to use the exact words, but you want to have the keywords and the transitions so that you can go from point A to point B and to point C and you're closing.
People who write out their notes do it because they want to say it exactly as they plan. But we're not interested in transferring the words. We're interested in transferring the ideas. And a good way to rehearse is to take the idea and rehearse that one idea, saying it lots of different ways. Make sure you say the key words, but force yourself to change the wording around it. And the bottom line is this. If you can speak well one-to-one or to a small group, speaking to a large group is exactly the same. It's just a bunch of ones, but a whole bunch of them at once.
And during that talk, you can look at 1 or 2 people and keep your eye on them, and it's just like talking one-on-one.
Yeah, I would say look only at 2 people. And then say your self-talk is, I know I talk well to 2 people. I'm just going to talk to these 2 people. And after about 5 seconds, move to a different part of the room and do the same thing. On Zoom, look at the camera, not at the people.
And perhaps, and what are some other things in terms of delivery to remember? Should you vary the speed of what you're saying? Should you raise your voice a little bit for dramatic effect? Should you pause? Should you move around, assuming it's not on Zoom?
All of the above. I would say the main things to do, the baseline is if you've just met new people in the last 6 months and anyone has said to you, would you slow down? Or would you talk a little louder? That means you have to slow down because you're speaking at the pace that you like and not at the pace that works for them to receive your information. And also, if you want to seem smarter, more authentic, and more sincere, be extremely articulate. I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland, and in Baltimore, Maryland, I never said any final consonant ever in my whole life until I met other kids who spoke, and I went, oh, you can choose how you speak? This is my speaking voice. I say every consonant, particularly the final sounds. My home voice, I still talk like Baltimore.
Okay, and is it good to slow down? Is going slower and clearer better than racing your speech?
Slow speaking is perceived as smarter, more credible. So leave out one story or leave out one example or one elaboration. So, because the reason we speak up is your mind goes, I have so much to say, I have to fit it all in. But what happens if you talk really fast? And what happens is people want to take your information, but they don't have time to download it because you're already on to the next thing and you look kind of scared.
And it's good to have that extra point in case you have the extra time. Otherwise, just forget about it.
You got it.
And invite them to contact you or something. And what about use of hands or visual aids?
I would say that first, write your talk and make sure your talk stands on its own without any PowerPoint, without any visuals. When you're finished, since people learn more if there are visual accompaniments, then decide out of my whole talk, which are the things that would be helpful for them if I put it in a visual. In other words, don't write your PowerPoints first and then go, oh, what am I going to say? Write your talk personalized the way we've described, and then add to that. And as far as hands goes, watch yourself when you talk with friends. Your hands act out real words. You can do that in person too. On Zoom, try to keep your hands away from the camera. And if you do use them, move very slowly.
And is it okay to use your hands if they're in synchronization with your point when you're giving a speech? Because I've heard people say different things about that, but there's nothing wrong with hands if they're helping to show you're enthusiastic, to helping to explain, to measure point 1 or 2 or 3 or something is higher or lower.
That's it. What you're doing is you're acting out real words. Just be sure you don't do repetitive circles or always coming back to hands together. Anything repetitive shows it. Even though you're not scared, you look scared. Now look, inside you might be scared the whole time, but you're turning on your business self because you're here to help others, and it will help them more if you look calm and confident.
And what about using a prop or something to get attention, or at some point in your talk? Like if I was a lawyer talking about accident cases and having 2 cars, crash or something like that.
If you're going to use a visual, hold it still. If you're even in person, let's say there's a picture of the 2 cars, hold it next to your face and hold it still. People tend to be shaking their hands, like shaking the prop as they're talking, because they would move their hands as they're talking. But rehearse holding something close to your face, holding it still, and when you're finished talking about it, lay it down and let your hands go again naturally.
I just want to remind our listeners, we're talking with Reesa Woolf, Ph.D. She's the author of Mr. Bear Speaks Without Fear. She's telling us about do's and don'ts for lawyers in public speaking, whether it's to a small group or a large group, and how public speaking is so important. And just give us your website again, and you're offering tips there, and you'll some tips that everyone can use.
Good. I want to say one thing before that, and that
Sure.
Mr. Bear Speaks Without Fear is great if you have adults or kids who have to go on interviews. It's really great for that. It's great for every kind of speaking, but pretty much when are people more fearful? My website is about confident speaking, and the name of it is Confident with a T, confidentspeaking.com. And under the contact, just say, send me your openers and closes, because the book is killer and that list is killer.
And this book, just to explain again what information is in the book and where our listeners can obtain the book.
The book is on Amazon, Mr. Bear Speaks Without Fear. It covers everything from how to write a speech, how to make it interesting, because lawyers, some of your stuff, people just kind of daze off, but it has a whole section on how do you make your information interesting. And part of that is using that list of openers and closes within the talk. Because if you can give a short example or an analogy, those really connect with people. It hits a different part of their brain. And so confidentspeaking.com, and it's all yours.
And for someone starting out as a public speaker, is it okay to get practice by, let's say, introducing someone or presenting questions to someone and letting someone else be the main speaker, or perhaps having an anchor approach where you're talking for 2 minutes and then the other person talks for 2 minutes and you may complement what each other says?
Pretty much. Practice makes better. So the more you do it and the sooner you do it, the more you're going to be a comfortable and confident speaker. The more you put it off, the more fear comes in. Because you have one voice in your head that says, hey, I know my stuff. I'm only here to help them. But the other voice in your head will torment you and harass you with all the, oh my God, what if? So it's better just to start speaking, getting good at it. And here's a real final thing I can say. Each time you speak, notice afterward, what am I proud of? What did I do this time that I like? And what can I improve on next time? I got good because I just kept improving.
And it's normal for someone to be nervous for that initial start of the speech? I used to feel like I was getting on a highway and it was in that acceleration lane. And as soon as it was, there was room to enter that first lane, then I was okay. It was just getting up to speed, having the words, and making sure the audience was engaged, and then transitioning onto the first lane of the highway, and then I was on sort of autopilot.
Ken, you have really named something that people who are afraid of public speaking don't know, and that is the first 5 minutes. All humans are more nervous. It's part of our most basic part of our brain that says, "Oh my gosh, I'm leaving the cave and all eyes are on me, and now I'm going to be eaten by bears and tigers." So the first 5 minutes is normal speaking fear, which is why I suggest you rehearse the first 5 minutes so that you can put on confident you. You know how afterward you're confident. So take 5 minutes later you and pretend that in the beginning. It is not speech anxiety. That's just normal speaking fear.
And just getting up to speed and just getting engaged in that talk. Any other tips for lawyers if they're, say, addressing a jury or a judge to practice, to have eye contact, to try to carefully tailor their message to the audience?
If you don't like making eye contact, because many people don't, then look at the top of your nose. It's called the bridge of the nose. Sometimes when I'm speaking, and I always invite like the president of the company in, and I'm happy they've joined, but sometimes, my scaredy voice goes, "Oh my God, he's here. I better be wonderful." And then what I do is I just don't make eye contact with him. I look at the bridge of the nose, and that way I'm not engaging with him, but he feels looked at. And I still, in fact, you can do that forever with every group. You don't have to actually look in someone's eyes. Look at the bridge of the nose of everyone you're speaking to, and it takes off the anxiety of connecting with them.
And if you forget a word, if you mispronounce something, what's the best way to recover from that?
You know how when you speak with your friends and you say the wrong word or you say the wrong date and you just fix it and keep going? Do that when you're speaking, no matter how large the group. No one's judging you on that. They just want your information, and they'll never remember any little glitches.
So if you don't make a big deal about it, you almost make it seem natural. They won't really notice it, and you'll be judged on the body of your work.
Yeah. So look at just watch yourself when you're with friends and you say it's Wednesday. Oh, no, it's Thursday. And then you keep talking. You're the role model for what you should do when you make mistakes in front of groups.
Okay, we'd like to thank our guest, Reesa Woolf, WOOLF, PhD. As you've heard, she's the author of Mr. Bear Speaks Without Fear, and her website is confidentspeaking.com. If you missed any portion of this program or you want to tell someone else about it, just go to nccradio.org for the podcast, and please join us next week at this same time on 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College, for another program on Law You Should Know.